Welcome to Creator Upload, your creator economy podcast. I'm Lauren Schnipper.
And I'm Joshua Cohen. Lauren.
What?
I like your exasperated wets.
Always.
We are going to see each other in person
Next week.
in Los Angeles.
In Los Angeles, we're going to be at SoCom, which is the Social Commerce Conference, founded by Max Bonator and Orca, which is the live shopping company that he started. And this is the second year. And, one of the founders of our, creator economy, Hannah Hart once said to me, I never go to a first year con because you never know how it's going to go. I went to a first year con at SoCon last year and SoCom, even though it was a con, and it was great. They did a great job for first year. Like it really was solid guests. They had like the CMO of Gap there, which is like a big get like year one. The food was great. I remember the lunch was phenomenal. And honestly, food makes a big difference. I don't care what you say.
It was fantastic. It was a great event. The person who interviewed Fabiola Torres, who's the Gap CMO, was fantastic too.
He could have prepared a little bit more, like at all. But yes, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about Josh Cohen, who has basically made it his life's mission to never prepare for anything.
It's not accurate. I prepared very well, and it was a fantastic interview. Yeah. And so good, Lauren, that we got invited back.
We did. We're invited back this time though in bigger than better. So we're doing the podcast live there. We're going to be interviewing some of the folks that were going to be on stage, and then each of us individually are going to be like moderating a panel. My panel is going to be just a little teaser, 10:45 a.m. The Creator Engine powering revenue, reach, and retail. And I've got like a banger of a panel. We've got A.L. Baumel, we've got Amy Nebben, Madison Weaver, Noah Swimmer, RJ Laress. I mean, this is going to be a banger of a panel. We're going to talk a lot about affiliates and how they've just sort of like come back from the dead, but like really have like kind of, people are kind of finally recognizing like the power of affiliate, no matter the size of the creator. And so I'm really excited. What's your panel going to be on, Josh?
And the great chaser for that's going to be like, okay, this is the reason I came here to SoCom, is going to be at 2:55. I'll be moderating a panel from culture to conversion with Damon Berger, who's head of consumer digital engagement at Gap. Josh Maynard, who's the GM of global e-commerce at Mr. Beast, and Kritika Pandey, who's the director and digital go-to-market and experience at Elf Beauty.
Yeah, no, that's going to be good. So yeah, it is Thursday, February 26th. I'm not getting an affiliate link for this, but I think you can still affiliate cut, but I think you can still buy tickets. So
you can totally buy tickets. If you're there, come say hi to us.
Definitely.
We'll be there all day.
Okay, but let's get back to business here. Josh, you have a great interview today. I think we're going to get right to it.
Yes, Lauren, I had a fantastic conversation with Armand Wilson, who's the VP of Categories and Expansion at Whatnot. I loved this conversation. Armand has been there for 5+ years and is really living and breathing this social commerce and live shopping. I don't want to call it a renaissance, but finally, I think it's come to almost fully realized its potential form that everybody in this ecosystem thought it was going to be. And Whatnot is a big player in that space. The company's valued now at nearly $10 billion. They had two $200+ million funding rounds in 2025 alone. The latest was in October, where they raised $225 million at that $10 billion valuation. Back in January of last year, the valuation was $5 billion. It nearly doubled within the span of 10 months or so. And Whatnot also released this State of Live Selling report, where they have some incredible statistics. Him and I get into it and just get into the culture and experience of kind of live shopping and social commerce today. It's a good prelude into SoCom for next week, and I think you'll enjoy it. Armand, thank you so much for coming on Creator Upload. It is a pleasure to have you here.
Josh, thanks for having me. Stoked to be here.
So I am so intrigued by this social shopping ecosystem and this live shopping industry. I'm really excited to talk to you about and dive into this space. First, I just want to kind of like take a step back and for you to tell me basically what is Whatnot and how would you define your kind of core competitive advantage? There's TikTok Shop, there's Instagram Live Shopping, YouTube's coming out with its own social shopping feature, and there's obviously traditional marketplaces. Where does Whatnot fit into this mix?
Yeah, for sure. Whatnot's a live shopping platform. Really, we're a social commerce platform, but live shopping is like our hero product. We've been around for about 6 years now, and all we really do is focus on making the best live shopping product possible. So I'd say to answer your second question, one of our biggest differentiators is we wake up every single day and that's all we think about is how to make the best products for our amazing sellers and also like the buyers and communities on the platform. I think kind of like I'll quickly just touch on the founding of Whatnot a bit, because I think it touches on like a bit of like why I think we're a bit different than other platforms and why we've been able to hit the scale. And so yeah, 6 years ago, Whatnot was, if you opened up Whatnot, it was not a live shopping platform. 6 years, yeah. It was not a live shopping platform. It was two-sided marketplace, and all we were selling were these little vinyl toys called Funko Pops, if you're familiar with them. And so really we were started as a better way to buy collectibles, but really specifically Funko Pops. And it wasn't that we were going after this big opportunity, this huge market. Now it's very obvious. Like in China, it's huge industry. But it was less about like chasing the opportunity and more about like really being deeply ingrained in these communities and trying to like solve problems for them. And so the original was like there's a lot of like fraud in buying Funko Pops, a lot of fake Funko Pops. And so we tried to sit in the middle and authenticate the transactions. And it works really well. We got a bunch of traction, but really what kind of had us take off was one day we saw some of our users just going on social media, going live and selling things live, selling Funko Pops live in kind of a janky way. Like people were bidding in the comments, and then you had to like PayPal people outside the platform, but it was super engaging and a bunch of items were sold. And so took a bet on it. One of our co-founders, Logan, locked himself in a room and like built the first live products over the course of like a couple of weeks. And Grant, our CEO, another co-founder, went live for the first time and sold a bunch of Funko Pops. And it was like magical. The community loved it. And so we started really just trying to build an amazing product for Funko Pop sellers. And then we did that for a really long time over the first year of the company. And then we started launching into different communities. So then we did Pokemon cards, then sports cards. Eventually we got into sneakers and fashion, and now we're in hundreds of categories. We're the biggest live shopping player in North America, UK, Europe, now recently Australia. And it's all kind of become because of this idea of just really building for the communities first versus building like kind of a horizontal live shopping products where you can get a bunch of different cool things on there. It was more of just like, let's solve for the communities and build in a really authentic way.
You're saying all this and you have some of the data to back it up. You all recently issued your Whatnot State of Live Selling report in 2026. One of the stats I want to point out right now that makes the most sense for this part of our conversation is you found that more than half of surveyed sellers said they generate the majority of their annual sales through this live commerce, live shopping function. And so tell me what the appeal is. What is it about live shopping that entices buyers to engage? I mean, like I come from an era where if I stayed home from school, I would watch QVC for a couple hours a day if I was sick.
Yeah.
And so like, I get it. This phenomenon has been around for a while, but it hasn't necessarily translated over to the internet until now-ish. But like, what's the appeal? What's so compelling about it?
I think when we think about like the best parts of buying on Whatnot, it's how can we really create like the amazing shopping experiences people get in real life. And so imagine like going, I'm Soho, New York, like imagine walking down to a shop, you walk in, you didn't know what pair of shoes you should buy, and you have this amazing interaction with the sales associate and they bring you to the shoe and then you buy that product. And that experience feels like more and more rare in today's world. Now you're like waiting in lines and there's a bunch of other hassles. But that's kind of how we felt about it. And so for me, like I've been buying a lot of vintage t-shirts on Whatnot as an example. And I love that experience because I'll go into a live stream, and it's very common for someone that you buy a bunch from they'll announce me by name. They'll say, "What's up, Armand?" They'll say, "Hey, I heard you were asking for those boxing t-shirts the other day. Here's actually this like vintage Muhammad Ali t-shirt in your size." And they'll show you how flowy it is, show you any of the imperfections, talk about the super specific niche things like this is printed on a Hanes tag, which makes this t-shirt more rare. And so to me, like the amazing parts of live is like you can just add so much more context and it's so much more personalization to the shopping experience. That's just really hard to get today online on like a static product page. And so I think that's like the best part of like the buying experience. And then I would say on like the selling side, the real value prop is like traditionally if you were selling things online, and so you would list 100 pairs of sneakers on a marketplace. Those would maybe sell casually over the course of the next 30 days. And, you generate, you find your shipping label, you ship them out like one by one. Whereas like on Whatnot, you go live for a couple hours, you'll sell all 100 pairs of shoes. And then you hit one button, we streamline all the fulfillment side so that all the labels get generated and printed out on your behalf. And then you can just ship much quicker. And so really for selling, you can just sell way more things on Whatnot than you can anywhere else.
And so it usually was for these kind of like social shopping platforms where you had to build up your audience somewhere else and then pour that over to that platform to sell. I mean, this is how Shopify has built up a lot of its business. It's being a storefront for creators who get their audience and their engagement on other platforms and then port it over to the shopping experience. How's it work on Whatnot? Has it reached a critical mass where there's just enough people engaged in enough niches on Whatnot at any given time that the discovery is where it needs to be for people to sell what they need to sell?
Yeah, 100%. That's one of the areas that we invest the deepest in is our discovery tools. And I think one of our specialties. And so really it's really hard to get a bunch of sellers on the platform, really hard to get a bunch of buyers on the platform. And so once they're there, we want to make sure that the right people are finding the right streams. And so now most of our big sellers, if you look at them, sellers that are now selling hundreds of millions of dollars of things per year are homegrown. And so they might have had a small social following, but generally the biggest sellers aren't these like big influencers or creators. It's folks that just built organically, like alongside like the rise of Whatnot. And so we spend a bunch of money on marketing. We just did this activation with Mr. Beast. And now I think it's like the first time ever where demand is outgrowing 50% faster than supply. And so it's like pretty much never been a better time to start a live shopping channel today.
Yeah, I'm just rattling off some stats from you guys here too. You said there was over 20 million new accounts created in 2025 with an average user spending 95 minutes per day on the platform.
It's crazy.
Gross merchandise value of over $8 billion in 2025. That's a lot of products that are moving through Whatnot. What do you say to new creators who are coming to the platform? Or like what's a typical Whatnot seller look like?
Honestly, super, super diverse. And also each category is like quite diverse itself. And so I would say in terms of like broad like kind of demo, it's like you see people that have a brick and mortar shop and they're selling sports cards and they go live. You see people that traditionally sell online that go live. You have online creators that are going live and selling things. And so it's really a mix of a bunch of people finding real like value and utility out of the platform. And then each category kind of has its own flavor as well. And so the people that are selling in women's fashion look incredibly different than the people that are selling in comic books, as like an example.
And is there a point you see when a creator goes from being like kind of a casual seller to a professional merchant on the platform? And if so, kind of like what's that threshold?
One of like the things I think that we're like most proud of on the platform and internally, we talk about it a lot, is like how many sellers are making a living off of the back of Whatnot. And so we, my team is constantly talking to sellers. It's what we do all day. And when we find those stories of folks that have maybe started off and they turn a hobby or a side project, kind of like a passion project, and they're maybe going live on nights and weekends and kind of moonlighting on Whatnot, and then they take that plunge into going full time, is like something that's like really, really special. And so I think the stat now is that 1 in 8 sellers are now selling full time on Whatnot. It's growing about like 20% year over year. And so we're constantly seeing more and more of these folks really being able to build like meaningful, sustainable businesses for themselves. And then also like some of these businesses, again, as I mentioned, like some of our bigger sellers started as 1 or 2 people operations, and they now employ hundreds of people, and they're doing hundreds of millions of dollars a year on the platform. And so it's really, I think a lot of people think live shopping may be quite niche, but I think what we're finding is that it's really building huge businesses off the back of the platform.
Yeah, there are recent predictions that say that live commerce will be 10 to 20% of total e-commerce by the end of this year. And I think for anyone who hasn't been on any of these platforms, that seems like just wild. But for you, from where you stand, like how does that look? Does that seem about accurate?
I mean, that number probably seems a little aggressive, but I do think live shopping is getting quite big. I mean, if you use Whatnot just as like a proxy and ourselves, like as you mentioned, we did over $8 billion in sales last year, which is growing exponentially, more than double year over year, and this year looks to be even more promising. And so I think live shopping is it's just getting started. Some of the things that I think get us excited, you mentioned the stat of like 95 minutes per day people are using the app. People are really, on like the buyer side, like people are spending a ton of time in the app. 95 minutes is more than any social platform there is, more than
Yeah.
double some of the big ones. And so they're engaging, they're really finding like value and entertainment out of just enjoying the streams that are happening, but they're also buying and coming back. And so customer retention is over 80% month over month, which kind of breaks both those stats, kind of break any sort of like e-commerce or marketplace like traditional metrics. And so, but it also still feels like very much like if you know, you know. And so I think if you're like on Whatnot and you know it, you're obsessed with it, you love it, you're telling all of your friends, and it is getting like bigger. Over the weekend, we were the number 3 biggest app in the App Store behind ChatGPT and Kalshi on Super Bowl weekend and ahead of Peacock on like Olympic time. And so Whatnot in like live shopping is definitely becoming more and more mainstream, but I still think there's a huge way to grow.
Yeah, I mean, if you compare Whatnot's average time spent per user to Twitch's is only slightly higher at like 106 minutes or so per user. And I think it's just, again, fascinating that this is both, I guess it's like part entertainment, part educational, part community. What do you think the real glue is that keeps people around for that long?
I think you kind of nailed it. I think it's a lot of community and there's a lot of entertainment come out of those things. And so I think it's very much, we see it when we do things like in real life. And so if we'll do an activation at something like New York Comic Con and you see our community live, you see people like addressing each other by their usernames and meeting them the first time and they feel like they know each other. And so it really feels like a nice kind of positive section of the internet today where people are going in and they have this like-minded interest, whether it's a pack of Pokemon cards or a rare handbag. People like love to talk about these products and collect them and just like be with the community that they can learn in from as well. And so a lot of people are in it for different reasons, but I think people are really just finding like true community on the platform. And it's like quite special. You kind of have to go and witness it to really understand it.
I didn't really put that together until just talking to you right now, but like I used to go to baseball card stores as a kid and 40%, maybe 40 to 60% of the time was looking at baseball cards, and the other 40 to 60% of the time on any given day was just talking to other people in the shop and talking to the owners and hanging out. So I totally see this as like an interesting kind of virtual third space for people who are interested around a shared kind of commercial good can get together and connect with other like-minded people.
Yeah, and imagine if you didn't have like a baseball shop like in your hometown, right? You can access all of this from like the comfort of your couch, and you're able to see way crazier product than you'd be able to see at your local shop because you can just go through and there's hundreds of people selling sports cards today right now on the platform, and you can see the latest releases. So part of it is like you get to see this amazing product and this like high-end product that may cost thousands of dollars, and you're able to like see it at any like moment. And so you can see these super rare cards. There was this crazy card that a couple of years ago called the Triple Logo Man, which is this LeBron card that had 3 NBA logo mans from his jersey from all 3 teams he played for. And there's a huge hunt going after it. And it's a very niche story, but I'll get into it because I'm into it. Drake was like opening up hundreds of thousands of dollars of cards on his like Instagram. Everyone was like chasing after this one card. And then eventually it was like opened and found on Whatnot. And the people that were there just like had this moment of history of like finding this card, seeing it for the first time. And eventually it was sold for like, I think it was like over $3 million. And so that's like an amazing way to like see like crazy and high end product. And also, I think some of the cool parts of sports cards is like maybe you want to buy just a pack within, some of these boxes are expensive. Maybe you don't have a couple $100s to buy a whole box and you just want to buy a pack. And then a lot of this is also just like democratizing that a little bit where you can buy, sellers are selling an individual pack of a big box and you're all kind of like part of this box break together, which again plays on this element of like being a part of the community and all being in it like for the same thing.
So looking towards the future, what are you most stoked on? What are you most excited about in this space?
Yeah, I mean, I think I think we're just in the early days of live shopping. I do think, I think last year was like a huge step forward. I think this is probably like the big year that live shopping really does become more mainstream. I think just the amount of different utilities and like use cases that you see live shopping really working for. I'm now, I'm obviously like internal and I'm drinking the Kool-Aid, but I'm now of the opinion that like pick something you can buy online and tell me like it can't be enhanced by live video. Everything from like cars to now we have like fresh seafood being sold like on Whatnot, where you have like a fisherman showing you how they caught the lobster, and then they are selling you the lobster and overnighting it to your door. We have like big brands that are going live and selling beauty products, and so I think there's just like a ton of different use cases, and so I think you'll just see a lot more people getting into it, new categories, new types of sellers. Like brands haven't really figured it out yet, but I think they'll really be leaning in this year, especially because based on all the inbound that we're getting from them. And so I just think this is going to be like the year that live shopping becomes a bit more mainstream.
We're going to see you selling some Artifact sneakers on Whatnot anytime?
Honestly, I do at least once a year, but Artifacts, which is my little side passion project, has unfortunately kind of died because Whatnot has taken over my life. But I'll get every year. I tell myself I'm going to get back into it.
Got it. Armand, this was amazing. Thank you so much for coming on. Would love to have you back. A fascinating deep dive into this app and this space. And where can people find out more about Whatnot?
Just download the app or visit our website, whatnot.com. And I truly believe it's one of those things where it doesn't make sense until you're in the app and you're actually like engaging with things. And now, 5 years ago, when I first joined, I would not tell anyone to just download it because it was a very like specific thing we were selling. It was very collectibles heavy. Now there's something for everyone. And so I would just encourage folks to download the app, play around with it. And I think you'll really see kind of like the magic for yourself.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Josh. Appreciate it.
Love talking with Armand. And since our conversation, I can't stop thinking about this idea that these creators who are doing this live shopping and social commerce are really creating these community experiences. I just never thought about it in that way before. I saw it as like strictly commercial enterprise, but thinking of it as this community environment, I totally get it because I loved going to those stores as a kid.
All right, Josh, let's get into it. The trial of the century. So as we all know, but as a recap, so Meta and Google are being sued by someone whose name has not been disclosed, but it is a person, a minor, at least at the time, who claims they have been harmed by an addiction to social media. And so the reason why this is such a big sort of trial, which I think bears repeating, is the fact that there are like, I don't know, 1,000 other cases sort of waiting in the wings that are very similar to this. So should the judgment go in favor of the plaintiff, in other words, them saying that, yes, social media is addictive and the sort of platforms knew this and et cetera, and they didn't do anything to sort of stop it, it's going to be what they call sort of a watershed thing, and it's going to create precedent. So all these like 1,000+ cases waiting in the wings are going to they're going to lean on this, and then they're going to probably get judgments in their favor, such that the platforms are probably going to be forced to make major changes as it relates to kids. Changes that up until this point, they basically are either saying they cannot do or refuse to do. An example would be like right now, you're not supposed to be on social media before the age of 13, but it's not, the platforms are not actually, liable to enforce that. They're just sort of like, well, we didn't know. And so Missouri, Adam Missouri testified about a week ago and now sort of infamously said that he doesn't think that social media is addictive. If anything, it's similar to sort of watching a Netflix show for, 19 hours at a time. So this week now, Mark Zuckerberg, testified in trial. And a few highlights from that. He said that increasing engagement on Instagram was not a company goal because what the plaintiffs are sort of, I think, arguing is that like they're going to do anything to increase engagement, which, includes potentially harming kids. And he's saying that, that's not a company goal, which having worked anywhere, I think that we can all agree that's probably not true. Oh, one thing I do want to mention is like a lot of the Meta folks entered the courtroom wearing the Meta Ray-Ban glasses, and the judge was not pleased about that. And I'm just like, what sort of chutzpah do you have walking in? Because they record everything. They have the ability to. So the judge was basically like, yo, you guys, if you're recording this, you better delete it immediately or you are all in contempt. Like that, I mean, really? Like walking in with the Meta Ray-Ban glasses? I mean, I'm just like, come on, dude.
It's an interesting PR moment for sure.
It's an interesting choice, I think. So the defense lawyer sort of pointed out that Zuckerberg actually reached out to Tim Cook at Apple, who's arguably a competitor, and said that talking in a quote from an email in February 2018, I thought there were opportunities that our company and Apple could be doing, and I wanted to talk to Tim about that as it relates to the well-being of kids. And so they're trying to sort of emphasize that Zuckerberg does care about the well-being of kids, and in fact, he would reach out to a competitor to discuss this. CNBC reported that the email exchange was a part of a broader portrayal by the defense attorney to show jury members that Zuckerberg was more proactive about safety of young Instagram users than was what was previously presented to the court by the opposing counsel. They talked a lot about like Instagram filters and those that sort of show that you've gotten plastic surgery. And so Zuckerberg, there was a lot of back and forth apparently internally about whether or not they should keep these, and apparently there was some discussion about the harmful nature that this could be for kids. And then Zuckerberg said, as it relates to this, Zuckerberg was pressed, this is again from CNBC, Zuckerberg was pressed about the decision to allow the feature when the company had guidance from experts that the beauty filters had negative effects, particularly on young girls. Zuckerberg said in the trial, I genuinely want to err on the side of giving people the ability to express themselves. One of the things that I thought was very telling was Zuckerberg said that during his testimony that some users lie about their age when signing up for Instagram, which requires users to be 13 or older. Lawyers shared a document which stated that 4 million kids under 13 use the platform in the U.S., and Zuckerberg said that the company removes all underage users it identifies and includes terms about age and usage during the sign-up process. A lawyer for the plaintiff said, you expect a 9-year-old to read all of the fine print? That's your basis for swearing under oath that children under 13 are not allowed?
That's a pretty good one.
That's a pretty good one.
Yeah.
Now, I would imagine in his head, he's thinking like, well, how does the 9-year-old have a device with which they can sign up for Instagram? Because I promise you his kids don't. And then one of my other favorite parts was when the opposing counsel sort of was talking about something he talked about in Joe Rogan's podcast, when Zuckerberg went on Joe Rogan's podcast. And he said from CNBC, lawyers also question whether Zuckerberg previously lied about the board's ability to fire him. Zuckerberg said on the Joe Rogan podcast, if the board wants to fire me, I could elect a new board and reinstate myself. And then Zuckerberg told the courtroom that he's, quote unquote, very bad at media. I don't think he's lying. I don't think he's perjuring himself. I think he's lying.
If this was 2012, one, that would be a Gawker headline. Two, they'd probably make T-shirts about it.
So true. So true.
And three, it'd just be everywhere. It'd be everywhere.
Yeah. No, it's so good. I am fascinated by this. I think it's a really exciting moment. Listen, at the end of the day, I can speak for myself. I think there's such amazing things about social media. I arguably have a career as a result of it, but I also think that, I think driving is really great. I don't think anybody under 16 should do it. I think smoking is terrible. Nobody under 18 should be allowed to do it. It's like there should be some guardrails in place, and whatever guardrails are in place today aren't working. There's too many people that are kids that are being harmed by these apps, and there's absolutely more that the platforms can be doing. That is my position. I am not pretending to be unbiased by this, and I am excited. It's a little soap opera. Like I'm watching like a lot of coverage of this, and it's like really fun. Like really enjoying myself.
Lauren, I want to ask you a few questions, but before that, I just want to zoom out a little bit. It's interesting to note that TikTok and Snap were also both named as defendants in this case, but they settled out of court days before the jury was going to be selected. Even TikTok, on the day the jury selection took place, settled out of court with the plaintiff here. And so now the only named defendants are Google and Meta.
Correct.
Which would lead one to believe that they, one, have the resources, and two, think they can really win this case.
Well, I don't know that that's necessarily I think, or you could say they try. They could have tried to settle, and they decided not to, because I think
That's fair too.
You have to zoom out and think there's a larger thing at play here. It's not just about this one person getting damages. This is about like the watershed effect that this could have, and perhaps a legal strategy would have been like, listen, if we take on all four at once, it's going to get really muddy. Whereas if you settle with these two, then you have some damages that you can like rebuild your life on. But then if we actually go after these two and then we win, then you've also affected change that necessarily, by the way, the other platforms are going to have to do as well, because then that's going to create precedent for them. So I actually think it could be a legal strategy. This is my, armchair expert legality over here. But like, to me, it actually makes a ton of sense. There's no way that the platforms didn't try to settle for this. You think Zuckerberg wants to testify?
I think for the same reasons you're talking about from the plaintiff's POV, the defendants might want to have a court deciding what the actual precedence is here moving forward.
Perhaps, but I think both sides can benefit from a win on either side, obviously. But it's not like I don't, to me, this isn't indicative like of there wasn't an attempt. Like they might have had 4 settlement offers and they decided to like, you know what, our case against Meta is much stronger, so take these or something like that. I could see that as a legal strategy. I don't know, man. It's exciting.
YouTube and Google executives are going to take the witness stand too. Interestingly enough, YouTube CEO Neil Mohan was originally supposed to be a witness in this case, but then his name was removed from the plaintiff's witness list. Other YouTube and Google executives are supposed to take the stand in coming weeks in this trial, but nobody's been named quite yet. Lauren, some quick questions for you. So I know it's been 7-8 years since you've been inside of the Meta organization.
Mm-hmm.
What was like any of this thought of during that time? Was there any contemplation of kind of like what's going to be safe for kids, what's going to be safe for people? Was that part of the calculus that went into new products you were around?
Safety, not as much as, no. It was all, there was like, in my tenure there were probably like, I don't know, 4 to 8 different teams assembled called like the teen team that we were trying to figure out how to get teens back on the platform. Definitely there was no talk about like trying to get like really young kids, that, to be fair, like at all. There was no like, it was definitely like you want to get like as soon as they're available and eligible, you want to get them on the platform. And Facebook at the time was already it was already less cool than Instagram at the time. And then it was less, then Snap came along and TikTok wasn't really a thing when I was there. Musical.ly was the thing when I was there. But safety, no. If anything, the conversations around safety when I was there were a lot around the policy around celebrities, because the stance was basically like, if you were famous, it's kind of fair game. So that sort of meant like copycat accounts or everything from like you're selling merch from like there was one colleague that had worked for a very famous actor who died tragically. Like this is obviously prior to Facebook, and there were all these accounts with that person's image and likeness and people selling like merch around it, and like there was nothing. The policy was such that like fair game. And I thought that I remember a lot of us chatting about how that felt really wrong, and like but that was the policy, and so. But no, in terms of kids, the conversation was always like around how can we make cool products that the kids want to sort of use. But it's also like, I started there in 2014, which is just like another universe. Like not
Totally,
all
yes.
the kids had devices yet. So like it wasn't as pervasive. So you weren't like worried about kids being on phones to the extent that you are now. So like it's just a different conversation now.
Totally, 100%.
But I would say growth was a huge priority at all times. Okay, next up, I really want to talk about Apple has decided to finally launch video podcast. So it's really crazy. If you think about Apple and its relationship to podcasts, it was really their kind of game to sort of lose. Like the only place anybody could listen to a podcast for the last for the first 10 years basically of podcasts was on Apple. But at the same time, Apple did like effectively nothing to innovate the product experience on the podcast app. Like it's basically been exactly the same forever. And in the meantime, you have all these other players that sort of entered the space, many that kind of don't exist anymore. There were a lot of independent podcast kind of apps. And then of course, Spotify came out about 4 or 5 years ago and just sort of like threw a ton of money and innovation towards podcasts, did a lot of different acquisitions. They bought Anchor, which was the app that helped you upload podcasts and distribute them much more easily. And a lot of different folks sort of came into the game. Apple really hadn't done anything. And so literally this week, Apple has finally decided to launch video podcasts, which is really, where the medium is kind of headed, which I think is like really interesting and exciting. Is it too late? I don't know. The other thing that's really tough about the Apple podcast experience right now is the fact that you have to download versus stream, which like then clogs up your storage space on your phone, which I've now basically switched just to Spotify because it has both the streaming and the video experience. So I think that like as the world is shifting, we sort of waking up. So Apple SVP of Services Eddie Q said 20 years ago, Apple helped take podcasting mainstream by adding podcasts to iTunes. And more than a decade ago, we introduced the dedicated Apple Podcast app. Today marks a defining milestone in that journey by bringing a category-leading video experience to Apple products. We're putting creators in full control of their content and how they build their businesses while making it easier than ever for audiences to listen or watch or to watch a podcast. So I think this is so true. And like in terms of them being the innovator and early to market, but they like, I find Apple. This is sort of indicative of Apple as a kind of company. To me, it's always interesting because Apple, of course, is like the sort of grand poobah, if you will, of like tech companies. But by all accounts, and everybody I know that's worked there, it's like it acts like a very old school corporate structure. Like everything is so secret. Like you can't like the teams are so siloed. You're not allowed to talk to each other about anything, and things seem to move like very slowly versus like the complete polar opposite of like a Facebook where they're like, we're going to throw everything against the wall and see what sticks and just go from there, which obviously there's benefits and pluses and minuses to both. So we'll see what happens in terms. I'm looking at this also for the broader like podcast market and just seeing how this, if they're going to do anything bigger with maybe deals with, podcasters and this and that sort of stuff. What do you think, Josh?
I can totally see this as being a preliminary play into Apple getting its own owned and operated podcasts for its Apple TV Plus product.
Right.
And then also for the start of them going and signing up other podcasts to be exclusive on Apple TV Plus. Just like Netflix, Spotify, and others are doing for their platforms. I mean, Apple has a subscription service. They want programming on there. Podcasts are kind of like the new reality TV where it's low-cost programming with high-profile people that you can pump out episodes of for eternity, basically. And they want to get in this game. I feel like this is the start for it where they have to have some location where they can show this to the audiences that subscribe to those kinds of things. Also, I like you said, Lauren, Apple was the first mover on this. And the reason that I started TubeFilter too, way back in 2005, Steve Jobs at some type of Apple development conference showcased a video iPod. And on the video iPod, he showed an episode of this video podcast called Tiki Bar TV, which was made by a few people in their Vancouver garage. I saw that. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. This is way cooler for me than whatever I was supposed to be watching at 7 p.m. on primetime television that night. Then started just looking more at the space, consuming more, and then eventually writing about it. I want to read you this headline in these first couple graphs from a Bloomberg article. This is from January 24th, 2006. Is the web the new Hollywood? The internet is becoming a breeding ground for filmmakers and TV producers in both the indie video and mainstream worlds. After years of the hype, the internet as TV is finally coming into its own. Never before has the opportunity been so great to take programming straight to the audience, circumventing the traditional film industry production and distribution system. Until now, clever animated shorts or video clips that made a splash online have trod a well-worn path straight to TV, showing up on MTV, The Tonight Show, or even commercials. But not everyone considers online TV a stepping stone to Hollywood's bright lights.
I love the web of it all. The use of the word web.
So quaint.
Do you remember The Net, the Sandra Bullock movie?
No.
Oh my God, it was so good. So good. She had to get like the hard drive. Oh, it was so good. She was so good. The Net, highly recommend. I haven't thought about that in a long time. Yeah, no, we'll see what happens with this. I'm so curious if they're going to do anything else in the space because it's blowing up, kids.
I think they definitely will. They'll have an original or license someone exclusively within the next 18 months.
Let's get to some uploads and downloads. I think notably, I don't know, I think it's definitely an upload. Snap is launching creator subscriptions. So they're launching a subscription feature that will allow creators to earn recurring income directly from their most engaged fans as the social media company works directly to diversify beyond advertising. Obviously, they're entering like a crowded market. I think it's notable. Evan Spiegel said, in the year ahead, growth in subscriptions will be a critical input metric to track our progress. I think it's notable that in their earnings call, they were Snap's the company reported 474 million daily active users, down 3 million from the previous quarter, which I think is interesting. And I also think it's notable that the subscription price, you can do it between $4.99 and $19.99 per month. After platform fees, creators will receive approximately 60% of subscriptions. And that is compared to Instagram, who, like, after, of course, any platform fees, they let creators take 100%. I don't know if that's going to be forever, but that is something to note. One other quick upload. OpenAI has poached Charles Porch, legendary Charles Porch, who has been at Facebook and Instagram Meta for like 15 years. He's going to be the new vice president of global creative partnerships. Charles Porch is the reason why Instagram got glam, is the best way to say it. And I'm very excited. He's a friend. Joshua. And so very excited to see what happens. I think he's there to sort of calm all of Hollywood's fears down about AI. So if there's anybody that can do it, it's Charles Porch.
Following in Fiji Simo's footsteps, who's now the
He
CEO of
is.
applications at OpenAI.
Yes, Fiji Simo they used to work together at Meta. And so that when I saw that, I was like, that makes a lot of sense.
Lauren, real quick, one upload from me. Knight, the management firm that formerly represented Mr. Beast and currently represents superstars like Kai Cenat, Sophia Nygaard, Sam and Colby, Hassan Piker, Your Average Consumer, and more, just raised $70 million to, quote, build, operate, and acquire businesses embedded in internet culture. Knight CEO Reed said, quote, over the last decade, we've watched attention shift from traditional entertainment to creators and artists born on the internet. I've always believed the next generation of writers, producers, and directors is currently making content on social platforms and will have leverage over the IP they create. That's why we believe the most successful media companies of the future will be built by people who understand internet culture and attention. So expanding just out of this creator representation space, which they've been doing for a while, and just going into the creators are going to make all kinds of companies for the future. We want a piece of all of that. So let's dive in.
Makes sense. All right, Josh, I think we did it.
Lauren, I think that's it. I'll see you trying to surreptitiously sneak into Broadway shows with Meta Ray-Bans on?
Great idea.
Fantastic idea. You can start your own TikTok. Do an Apple video podcast about it.
Okay.
If not there, see you next week. It's SoCom. Looking forward to it. Today's show was produced by Lauren Schnipper, Joshua Cohen, that's me, and Adam Connor. It's edited by Adam Connor too. Original music is by London Bridge. You can check him out on Instagram at London Bridge Music. Make sure you subscribe to Creator Upload right here on YouTube, on Apple Podcasts as well, Spotify, or wherever you're listening. While you're there, give us a rating and leave us a comment. If you want to talk, hit us up at info@creatorupload.com. If you like our show, recommend it to a friend. If you love it, just tell everyone. Thanks for listening to Creator Upload, and we will be back next week.